Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel where we're diving headfirst into day 6 of the Nicole Rice trial, and let me tell you, it was a day. The FBI's expert witness took the stand again, and the defense did not hold back. They picked apart his analysis, exposed his inconsistencies, and threw out a major bombshell. What if Nicole Rice isn't actually the killer? Y'all, we're talking about a new suspect with a violent history and a matching knife, how law enforcement may have ignored crucial evidence, and whether this case was influenced by a TV show. So grab your snacks and hit that subscribe button because this one is a wild ride. Let's get into it. Day 6 started with FBI agent James Coons back on the stand, testifying about Nicole Rice's shifting alibi, alternative suspects the police might have overlooked, and forensic evidence pointing to another theory. And then the defense came for his throat. Big question of the day, did the real killer slip through the cracks? Let's talk about Devon Hall, a name that kept coming up over and over again on day 6. He arrived in Minot just before the murder. He was arrested for breaking into an apartment with a knife a week later. He matched a witness description of someone running from the crime scene. And get this, his knife was almost identical to the murder weapon. If that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. The FBI's behavioral unit actually identified Hall as the strongest suspect, but the prosecution still went after Nicole Rice instead. The defense went after the FBI expert, and it was brutal. They challenged Coons' entire analysis. They pointed out that his timeline for Devon Hall was wrong. Hall arrived in Minot a day later than Coons originally claimed. They questioned why Coons didn't personally visit the crime scene or investigate Hall further, and then came the kicker. They asked him if he even knew about the Carpenter Supreme Court decision, which changed how phone records are used in investigations. He did not. Oof. Then we have the staged crime scene theory. The prosecution has been pushing the idea that the window screen was cut to make it look like a break-in. The cut in the screen contained Anita's blood, meaning it was made after the murder. So, did the killer try to throw off investigators? The defense argued that the entire scene was suspicious, including the fact that maintenance worker Marty Andel found the broken screen, took it for repairs without telling the police, and allegedly told a friend he had done something really bad before dying by suicide. That is not normal behavior. And par for the course, Nicole Rice's alibi was under fire. One of the biggest problems in this case, Nicole's story has changed so many times that it's hard to keep track. Remember I said in the other video, for day 5, Nicole's story changed so many times. First she said she never saw Anita that night. Then she remembered seeing her at the fridge. Then she heard a male voice at 1 a.m. Then she wasn't sure if she left Friday night or Saturday morning. And then the defense pointed out a 7.5-hour gap in Nicole's timeline where nobody can confirm where she was. That's a long time to be unaccounted for. But no physical evidence ties her to the crime. The murder weapon had male DNA, not Nicole's. Male DNA was found under Anita's fingernails. And yet, police never fully investigated the male DNA evidence. Now, was cold justice a help or hindrance? At this point, the defense basically accused the police of reopening the case just because of the TV show Cold Justice. They claimed the cops weren't even looking at Nicole Rice until the show got involved. They argued that law enforcement ignored leads in favor of building a narrative for TV. And they straight up said that the police botched the case. This is one of the wildest defenses I've ever seen. After the court took their lunch, both sides officially rested their cases, and it was time for closing arguments. This is where both sides pull out everything they've got, connecting the dots, making their final pitch to the jury, and basically trying to convince 12 strangers that they're right. And y'all, the state came out swinging. They laid out a timeline, dissected the evidence, and made a bold claim. Nicole Rice is the only person who could have done this. But did they really prove it? Deputy State's Attorney Tiffany Sorgan stepped up to the lectern, thanking the jury for their time. She set the stage with a powerful metaphor. This case is like a jigsaw puzzle, and they've spent the last 7 days collecting pieces. Some are big, some are small, but together they paint the full picture of what happened to Anita Knutson. That picture, according to the prosecution, it all points to one person, Nicole Rice. And now let's look at some key points from the state. Let's start with motive. Nicole and Anita had a toxic roommate relationship, fights over fish tanks, alarm clocks, and locked doors. Texts from Nicole show rising tension. Means. The front door was locked from the outside. Only a few people had a key. Nicole was one of them. Opportunity. Nicole had a 9.5-hour gap in her alibi the night of the murder, giving her plenty of time to drive from Velva to Minot, commit the crime, and return. Forensic evidence. The cut window screen was staged. Anita's blood was found inside the cut, meaning it was made after the stabbing. Witness statements. Multiple people claim Nicole made damning comments over the years. William May, the ex-boyfriend, stated she was drunk at a party and said, "I did it. I killed Anita." Christina Haller, the friend, stated that Nicole described the murder before the details were even public. And Donna Belland, the co-worker, stated that Nicole said, "Why would I cut the screen? I had a key." Suspicious much? The prosecution sure thinks so. So now let's look at the theory of the crime. The state's case is simple. Nicole and Anita's fights escalated. In the early morning hours of June 3rd, 2007, Nicole drove back to Minot. She waited for Anita to get out of the shower, then stabbed her twice in the chest. To stage a break-in, she cut the window screen after Anita was already dead. She locked the door behind her and drove back to Velva. Boom! Murder! According to the prosecution, no one else had the access, motive, or opportunity to commit this crime. Nicole was the only person who couldn't be ruled out. So, does the prosecution have a slam dunk case? They do have some strong points. Nicole knew crime scene details before they were public. She changed her alibi multiple times. She allegedly confessed to multiple people over the years. The forensic evidence suggests a staged crime. But there are some issues too. No physical evidence directly links Nicole to the murder. The male DNA found under Anita's nails has never been identified. Some witnesses came forward years later, which is just too convenient. I gotta ask y'all, do you think this is enough to convict? Is the state's case airtight, or is there reasonable doubt? After the prosecution made their case loud and clear, it was the defense's turn to fire back. And let me tell you, they did not hold back. They called the state's case a mess, said police work was sloppy, and accused the prosecution of pushing a TV show narrative instead of real justice. Let's break it down a little bit. Attorney Rick Sand stepped up, and y'all, he was not holding back. From the jump, he called out the entire investigation, saying it was botched from the start. His key arguments: there's no DNA linking Nicole to the crime, there's no forensic evidence proving she was there, the case is built on old, unreliable witness statements. Cold Justice, the TV show, pushed the case forward, not real evidence. The biggest claim? The state's own lead investigator didn't even review the full case file before bringing charges. Yikes! The defense really pointed out the holes in the state's case. The lack of physical evidence, the knife, no DNA from Nicole. The apartment, no DNA from Nicole. The victim, no DNA from Nicole. Yet, there was male DNA under Anita's nails. Who did it belong to? The defense says the state ignored this to keep the focus on Nicole. The changing alibi issue. The state says Nicole changed her alibi multiple times. The defense says, who wouldn't after being interviewed for 18 years? And what about other witnesses? The defense calls out police officers, witnesses, and even the prosecution for changing their own statements. The train ticket problem. The state says Devon Hall was on a train in Montana the night of the murder. The defense says, prove it. They argue the state has no actual train records showing he wasn't in Minot. The TV show narrative. The defense goes all in on cold justice, saying they came in, made a show, and left Nicole in that chair. They argue that if the real suspect had been a dead guy, Marty Andel, or someone like Devon Hall, then the case wouldn't have gotten attention. Now we get into the state's rebuttal. It's the last word before the jury makes their decision. And the prosecution fired back at the defense closing. Deputy State's Attorney Tiffany Sorgan wasn't having it. She reminded the jury, the case isn't built on TV, it's built on evidence. The only suspect police couldn't eliminate was Nichole Rice. The window screen was staged after the murder. Nicole confessed multiple times to multiple people. And her most powerful point, she told the jury, use your common sense. Nicole had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. There's only one logical conclusion. She's guilty. And with closing arguments done, the judge gave the jury their instructions. What does this mean? The jury must only consider evidence presented in the trial, not speculation, not outside info. The prosecution has the burden of proof. Nicole is presumed innocent unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If the jury has any reasonable doubt, they must acquit. The weight of the case is now in their hands. At that point, the case was officially in the jury's hands. The prosecution said Nicole Rice is the only person who could have done this. The defense says this case is a mess and full of reasonable doubt. Now I gotta ask, if you were on the jury, what would you do? Would you convict, or is there just too much reasonable doubt? So here's a little bit about how deliberations work for those who may not have ever seen a jury, been on a jury, etc. Once the jury receives instructions, they are sent into deliberations. And here's what happens. The jury selects a four-person jury leader to guide discussions. They go over evidence, witness testimony, and legal instructions. If they have questions, they can send notes to the judge. They must all agree on a unanimous verdict, either guilty or not guilty. And one of the biggest questions asked by a lot of watchers, how long does a jury deliberate? Well, it depends. Some juries decide within hours if the case is clear-cut. Others take days or even weeks if there's a disagreement. If they can't agree, we could get a hung jury, which means a mistrial. So that was it. The case is out of the court's hand and into the jury's. Will they convict Nicole Rice, or will they decide there's just too much reasonable doubt? You will find out in the very next video, which will be the final verdict. That's it for this video. The jury has a lot to consider, but what did you think? I know that by the time this video comes out, there was already a verdict. Try not to give it away in the comments if possible. But drop your thoughts in the comments about what you thought when you heard the closing arguments, and who do you think convinced you their side. That's it. As always, stay safe, stay curious, and see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.